Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Institute Saga 4 in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 1, What Has Gone Before. Part 1. The sole survivor of an ancient race, Kall, son of the scientist Jor-El and his wife Lara Lorvan, was sent to Earth as an infant mere moments before Krypton was destroyed. Discovered by Jonathan and Martha Kent, the newly renamed Clark Kent was raised as a human by his new, loving parents. After his father's death, Clark took his heritage and traveled to the Arctic, where he activated the Fortress of Solitude and spent 4 years learning about his now extinct race before returning to his mother's side. Approached by Charles Xavier, Clark and his mother accepted places at the Xavier Institute for the Gifted, Clark as a tutor/mentor, while his mother, by unanimous acclaim, became the goddess of the kitchen. Clark moved the fortress, concealing it underneath the manor and using the technology in it to create defenses that were effectively unbreakable, giving the inhabitants the knowledge that they were truly safe. Joining the staff of the mansion, Ororo Monroe, Storm, Logan, Wolverine, and Professor Xavier himself, Clark soon befriended the 2 students already there, Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. More students soon came to the mansion to join them: the teleporter Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, Catherine Pryde, Shadowcat, Anna Kent, Rogue, and Ororo's nephew Evan Daniels, Speak. At Logan's request, Clark helped to recover and heal Logan's old friend Steve Rogers, Captain America, who had spent several decades in cryogenic stasis. Xavier's enemies were not idle during this time. While gathering powerful mutants to become his acolytes, Magneto sent one of his lieutenants, the shape-changing Mystique, to gather younger mutants to counter Xavier's students. The 4 recruited mutants, Lance Alvarez, Avalanche, Todd Polanski, Toad, Fred Dukes, Blob, and Magneto's son Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, became known as the Brotherhood. Although they faced off against Xavier's students several times, they soon settled into an uneasy truce until the day that Pietro betrayed Mystique at his father's orders, attempting to kill Superman as he did so. Rescued from imminent interrogation and torture, Mystique officially, albeit temporarily, allied herself with Xavier's forces, reuniting first with her son, Kurt, then her one-time adopted daughter, Rogue. Her defection allowed Xavier to discover Magneto's plans and, with the aid of the Avengers, move to counter them. Magneto's flawed plan to transform the population of Earth into mutants using a kryptonite-enhanced energy wave came within seconds of wiping out humanity, but a new factor was introduced. Xavier's half-brother, Cain Marko, Juggernaut, was flung into battle by Superman and promptly seized the keystone of Magneto's plan, the Gem of Sidorak, the very item that had empowered Juggernaut years previously. The resulting explosions destroyed Magneto's plan, but he managed to escape with many of his followers. With the threat negated, the Avengers and the X-Men returned to their own lives. The 3 remaining members of the Brotherhood, since Pietro had fled with his father, returned to Bayville in a stolen plane, where they were met by Mystique, who decided to continue leading them, this time in a stance of neutrality. Superman chose to use the respite, as brief as it may be, to go back to what was once his home world to see if there was anything left that he could claim as his birthright. Juggernaut, freed from the induced rage of the demon Sidorak but still possessing its power, returned to Earth. Part 2. Using the lack of obvious threats to perform a mission of his own, Superman traveled to the ruins of Krypton where, as well as multiple pieces of salvageable technology, he also discovered 9 surviving Kryptonians on Krypton's sister planet Argos, held in stasis. Bringing them back to Earth, Clark met with the new students recruited by Xavier before encountering Squirrel Girl. Shaken by the experience, Superman brought his cousin Kara Zor-El out of stasis. Soon after, the newly named Supergirl aided Captain America in attempting to stop a plot by Magneto. Although they were less than successful, they worked together well enough that Kara afterwards accepted the offer of membership into the Avengers. During a mission conducted at the same time, the other Avengers discovered that a female clone of Wolverine had been created. Programmed to be an assassin, the mutant known only as X-23 was handed over to Xavier and placed in a modified training room while Xavier and Jean Grey worked to undo the mental damage wrought upon her. The tattered cloak of secrecy surrounding the existence of mutants was torn asunder when the anti-mutant and anti-alien group calling themselves the Friends of Humanity unleashed a weapon that they had been building in secret, the hunter-killer Sentinel robots. The first public outing of the Sentinels was in response to a crisis that the FA themselves had created, but the outcome they desired was prevented by the actions of the X-Men, rescuing the mutant that the FA had kidnapped and forced to go on a rampage. Soon after, over 100 Sentinels were sent to wipe out the mutant-friendly nation of Genosha. The Genoshans, led by Juggernaut, fought back, aided by the X-Men. Unbeknownst to them, a second wave was destroyed by Magneto and his newest acolyte, a less-than-perfect clone of Superman called Bizarro, while the other two groups which descended on Bayville were taken out by Squirrel Girl. Soon after, the non-human nocturnal sentients called the Gargoyles sought an alliance with the X-Men, and the mutant group calling themselves the Morlocks accepted an offer of refuge in the aptly named Undersea Dome Sanctuary. In an attempt at getting revenge, the anti-mutant Senator Kelly leaked Superman's true identity to the public. This backfired when several of the mutants at the Xavier Institute also chose to go public, gaining popularity due to their links to Superman. The plans of the Friends of Humanity took another hit when Magneto and his acolytes located and seized their main Sentinel factory, reprogramming the giant robots for a new mission, an assault on the White House. Timing the attack for when the Avengers were dealing with a problem in Asgard, Magneto led his new metal soldiers and the clone of Superman named Bizarro in an attempt to seize the president. Despite Bizarro fighting Superman, the Sentinels found themselves outmatched by the X-Men and the other mutants who had rallied to their call and were destroyed. Magneto himself was almost killed in an explosion, but was rescued by his son, Quicksilver. However, the attack was not Magneto's only plan, just the only one that had failed. His acolytes managed to seize the lab belonging to the mutant scientist Mr. Sinister and also managed to kidnap Susan Storm, delivering her to Latveria. The Brotherhood promptly teamed up with the Fantastic Four to rescue her, with several members of the X-Men and their allies aiding them in launching their assault and retrieving the Invisible Woman. Upon returning to the Institute in triumph, Clark proposed to Mystique. Magneto and Doom, however, were far from defeated. Part 3. With the newest threats apparently suppressed, the Institute started to return to normal, only for things to be shaken up when an alternate version of Superman appeared from a different reality. After managing to help him return to his home, which necessitated building an inter-reality gate, the X-Men managed to revive 4 of the remaining 6 Kryptonians that had been rescued from Argo. Soon after, Superman and Mystique prepared to get married in a ceremony shared with Reed Richards and Susan Storm. However, once again events proved a hindrance. Partway through the ceremony, a starship commanded by General Zod and carrying over 50 of his men appeared in orbit. Only a show of strength and the offer to let them transform Venus into a new home world for the Kryptonian refugees dissuaded the newcomers from trying to seize control of Earth. With the crisis averted, Superman and Mystique finally got married and went on their honeymoon. Magneto had not been idle and took the offensive using Galatea, a clone grown from Kara's Q&A, to try and kill General Stryker, a military man known to believe that mutants were a threat. Soon after, Magneto reacted to the news that a cure for mutation had been found by gathering a veritable army of mutants and striking at the source of the cure. His assault came within moments of succeeding, but the timely arrival of the X-Men proved to be the tipping point. However, during the battle, Angel was struck down from the skies by Galatea. The clone was in turn struck down by an enraged Ororo Monroe who used a lightning bolt of unprecedented power to avenge her winged friend. Just prior to these events, Superman had left Earth at the behest of the son of Odin, leading a group of the most powerful heroes on Earth against the Mad Titan Thanos, who was in the process of collecting the Infinity Gems, metaphysical constructs that would grant him infinite power when used in conjunction with a special gauntlet. As Thanos placed the last of the gems into the gauntlet, the heroes attacked with Squirrel Girl being the one to bring down the would-be deity. Both events were nothing more than diversions, however, hiding the true threat, the reawakened ancient mutant known as Apocalypse. Moving in secret, the immortal being assembled a force of his own, using mind-controlled mutants, magical golems, and subverted sentinels to prepare for his planned assault. By his side stood the enigmatic Mr. Sinister while the 4 beings known as his horsemen were ready to obey his every command. Controlled by technology taken from the Eternals, Magneto, the renamed Archangel, Galatea, and the shapeshifter once named Morph and now called Apophis were extensions of Apocalypse's will. His forces were bolstered by those of Hydra, led by the Red Skull, his service ensured by the mental commands placed by Mr. Sinister decades prior. Seeking to seize ultimate power on Earth, Apocalypse struck first at S.H.I.E.L.D., taking the 3 powerful helicarriers that had just finished construction. Even as he rode his new flagship into the skies, the heroes mustered their forces and struck back with Superman taking on Apocalypse in single combat, only to fall before his might. Before Apocalypse could strike down the Man of Steel, though, a new force entered the battle. General Zod and his 2 lieutenants came to the aid of Earth and defeated Apocalypse, imprisoning him within a stasis field. Without the ancient tyrant to lead them, Apocalypse's forces fell apart and were defeated, his horsemen freed from his control. Of the 4, Archangel chose to remain with the gargoyles until he was sure he had healed. Magneto was rescued by Quicksilver and taken into hiding while Galatea awoke to find herself being offered a job with the Guardians of Genosha, a position that she accepted. Morph returned to the Xavier Institute where with the aid of Xavier and Sage, he began to heal from that which had been inflicted upon him. Knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D. had been compromised, Nick Fury called for help from his other reality allies in weeding out the traitors while simultaneously overseeing the relocation of S.H.I.E.L.D. itself into a new building created by the new Kryptonians. Although temporarily unable to counter the rising tensions once more, Fury was able to direct Generation X and the Brotherhood into recapturing a former S.H.I.E.L.D. base that the newly founded Church of Humanity had seized, a base which was promptly sold to Xavier for use by Generation X and the other students of the Xavier Institute. And so with the threat of Apocalypse ended, the heroes returned to their lives. However, they were unaware that a threat from the days of Krypton was closing in on them. Monitoring Program GK 59818 KTM report indicates energy emissions similar to those of the Kryptonian Embassy T-Space power cores. Analyzing. Possibility exists that readings are result of technology carried on vessel sent from Krypton just prior to cessation of planetary existence. Analysis of records indicates high likelihood of craft containing single survivor of Krypton. Cross-referencing with population database. Highest probability craft occupant is Kal, son of Jor-El. Conclusion: Krypton is not completely recorded. Action must be instigated to correct flaw. Alert: core programming forbids active termination of Kryptonian citizens. Calculating solution. Monitoring Program GKM 68349ZYH report indicates existence of planetary datanet. Analyzing. Planetary datanet protocols analyzed and integrated. Scanning datanet search parameter KALL. Records found, 169285549. Sorting via popularity, scanning record KALL on datasite Wikipedia. Scanning. Scanning. Chapter 2, New Team. Not fair. The Joker screamed as he found himself surrounded by not 1 but 3 Supermen. No. 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 You should give up now. Batman smirked as he appeared beside the black and silver-clad Superman. You can't win. You know, Joker mused as he took a thoughtful pose, if Black and Silver there can borrow alternates of himself to team up with, why can't I do the same? The Joker in my universe met Mr. Black and was paralyzed from the waist down. The Superman on Joker's left stated. I heard that he later tried to make a joy buzzer and accidentally turned his wheelchair into an electric chair. He did. A second Batman confirmed as he stepped up, briefly glancing at his armored counterpart. You don't exist where I come from. The third Superman stated and Joker sagged. I don't? Really? Oh, this is so depressing. All right, Batsies, send me back to jolly old Arkham. Actually, we borrowed a concept from Superman, the unaligned one. The first Batman added as Joker gave a meaningful glance at all 3 Supermen. A week ago we took delivery of a number of stasis pods for use with dangerous criminals, holding them outside time until a way to remove the danger they present can be created. Stasis. Joker repeated, then his eyes widened in horror. No. You can't do that. You'll be held in a pocket of null time. The armored Batman said with a grim smirk. For you, no time at all will pass, no matter how long you are in there for. You won't lose a single second from your lifespan. But the world will continue without you. Joker's already pale face somehow turned even whiter as the 2 blue-clad Supermen took his unresisting arms. The black-clad Superman vanished in a blur, then reappeared with an angled cylinder which opened in readiness. No hey, a quarter Joker's howl was suddenly silenced as the transparent door slammed shut and the pod activated, freezing him motionless. "Thank you," the armored Batman stated. "I only wish that I had access to this technology prior to contact." The other Batman agreed. "The favor has been repaid." "It has." The first Batman nodded, then they both stepped back and seemed to fade into the night, leaving the three Kryptonians surrounding the pod. "So, what do you say about storing this clown somewhere safe, then, a meal?" "Your mother's meals are outstanding." The black-suited Superman agreed. "Deal. Let's get this done. And then we can continue discussing just how we are supposed to differentiate between ourselves without risking the secret identities of those of us who still have them." The third one agreed. "Dome numbers." The other two Supermen paused, then the second one shook his head. "No, that would have me as 0 or Central. Alpha." "Hey, Clark." "Hey, Logan/hello/hi. You know, we really need a way to tell the three of you apart." Logan groused from where he was sitting, reading a paper. Kal suggested dome numbers based on the moon base. Clark said, and Logan nodded slowly. "Makes sense. And since we're in our reality, you wouldn't need the number here, whereas in Cal's reality, he wouldn't need his number, but you'd be Clark 0. Clark Alpha." The third Superman said with a smile. "After all, we all rely on your reality to cross-link through." "Thank you, Kal7. I second the motion." "Thanks, Kal49. The duo snickered at the annoyed expression on Clark's face, then the newly designated Kal49 smirked. "I think that a small numerical display on our belt buckles, one that activates whenever we're out of our home realities, would work. Small enough that it doesn't attract attention, but visible if you know where to look." "Seconded." Kal7 said instantly. "I'll have the Justice League uniforms modified when I get back. I think a holographic overlay would work best." "I'll do the same." Kal49 agreed, and Clark sighed. "I'll have my allies' outfits upgraded to show an alpha when not in this reality. Good thing that we're the ones making the decision." Kal7 laughed. "Imagine how long it would take if it had been decided in a full committee. I don't think even our Kryptonian lifespans would have allowed us to live long enough to see what decision was reached." Kal49 laughed, then he sobered. "Clark." "Yes, Clark. Are you ever going to start up your own team?" Clark shook his head. "I don't have any plans to." "Ah, Clark," a new voice said as Charles Xavier entered the room, followed by a dark-haired man. "Just the person I was looking for." "Well, we'll be heading back," Kal7 said. "I'll have to thank your mom again on the way out, maybe have her meet my mom." "Oh row," Kal49 said reverently, his gaze unfocused. "Two supreme chefs? Will the multiverse cope?" Clark shook his head in resigned but amused annoyance as his alternates departed, then he turned his attention back to Xavier. "I don't know if you two have officially met before, but Clark, meet Kevin Sidney, once known as Morph, a code name that he has since reclaimed. Kevin, this is Clark Kent, Superman." Kevin finished, offering his hand. "Pleased to meet you, sir." "The pleasure is mine, and I'm glad to see that you're recovering well," Clark replied, accepting the handshake. "Since the Apocalypse incident, I've been communicating with other heroes around the world." Charles began before pausing as Clark face-palmed. "Sir, did you just create a super team for me to lead?" "Damn, I know you said that he was fast," Kevin whispered in awe, and Superman glared briefly at him before returning his attention to the professor. "So, what have you done?" "Actually, they're assembling now," Charles said calmly. "Trust me, please." Clark sighed. "Damn it. So, Professor Xavier offered you membership of the team as well?" asked the lithe man clad in a black bodysuit styled to resemble a stylized cat. "No. My father sent me," the black-haired teenager replied. "I am under strict orders not to engage in any activities that would bring damage to the team and to obey Superman's orders. After all, Clark Kent is one of my gene parents. Now that is a story that I want to hear at some point." a well-muscled black man said as he approached. Isaiah Bradley, but in the field you can call me Patriot. Connor Von Doom, Guardsman. The teen replied with a slight bow. I have heard about you, sir. May I assume that the medical treatment worked? It did. Isaiah smirked. Not only on me, the other 4 survivors of the experiments were located and got their brains fixed too. 2 of them are now in the FMC, Tuskegee, and Trooper, the 3rd joined the Solar Defense Fleet and the 4th is, just wandering. I think I met him once. A new voice said and the owner of the voice stepped up, her oriental clothing somehow accentuating her Arabic heritage. Sidera Bakut, Gatekeeper. She smiled. I can create portals to cross any distance, or use the same energy as offensive blasts. And this is Lady Britain. Betsy Braddock. Telepath. The red, white, and blue-wearing woman smiled. Captain Britain is my older brother. So, we have the heavy hitters, the ranged attacker and the telepath. Isaiah nodded. I'm liking this team. Then you'll like it even more when I introduce you to your new leader. Charles said as he floated in through the door. Ladies, gentlemen, say hello to Clark. T'Challa half shouted in greeting as he bounded over to clap the new arrival on his shoulder. It has been a while, my friend. You've met Charles asked and T'Challa nodded. I asked for his aid in a mission against those seeking to depose me and install a new ruler. I knew where the proof was, but I needed help in securing it. Clark agreed to aid me. You never mentioned that, Charles said, the amusement obvious in his voice. I didn't think it was my story to tell, Clark said with an embarrassed shrug. Ha! T'Challa laughed. Then I offer not only my own skills and abilities to this team, but those of my land as well, my friend. Thanks, Clark managed to say, causing T'Challa to burst out laughing again before dragging the Kryptonian to where the others were watching. So, my friend, let me introduce our new allies. Meet Guardsman, Patriot, Gatekeeper, and Lady Britain. And this is Morph, Clark said, waving for Kevin to join them. He has a very wide range of powers. Kevin gave a wry smile. King T'Challa. Yes, father, Connor replied. He seems to be an honorable man. That would be because he is. Doom replied soberly. He is one of the few leaders whom I can truly trust to keep his word, both in letter and in spirit. You can rely on him, my son. Thank you, father, Connor said with a slight bow. As for the others, if they are chosen to work alongside Clark Kent, they must in their own ways be great. Doom mused. I chose wisely when I sent you to Xavier. I thought you always chose wisely, father, Connor said and Doom glared at him. I have made many mistakes, many errors, and many misjudgments in my past. He ground out. The reason I am great is that I have acknowledged those errors and learned from them. Do not believe that any person is always right, all make mistakes. What matters is how one acts to correct them. I understand, father, Connor said, slightly taken aback. Excellent. I am certain that you have much to do as a member of the Protectors as I have with the project your sister is undertaking for me, so I leave you with my blessings. For Latveria. For Latveria, and for the world. Connor replied, earning a nod of approval before the screen went blank. For a long moment, he simply sat staring at the screen, then he rose from the chair and walked to the window. The view outside was incredible, the stars shining brightly without any atmosphere to distort their light. Below the starscape was the lunar horizon and over a dozen of the domes intended to connect to the myriad realities that they would eventually contact. A chime sounded and Connor half turned. Enter. The door to his suite opened and Patriot stepped in, looking round. Guardsman, or may I call you Connor? We are off duty, so Connor is fine. Then I am Isaiah, the dark-skinned man replied, strolling over to join him and looking out of the window. You know, I never really expected to be here, on the moon. Heck, I never thought I'd become a proper hero, but here I am, one of the Protectors. Connor remained silent, allowing the veteran to carry the conversation. I heard that you're a half Kryptonian, Isaiah commented. What does that mean for your powers? I'm stronger and faster than normal humans, although not up to Kryptonian standards. Connor admitted. I can't fly, nor can I use heat vision or X-ray sight. We'll have to spar some time. Patriot shrugged. Anyway, Clark's mom is cooking us a team meal, so you may want to get into your uniform as it'll be semi-formal. Afterwards, we'll be testing our equipment and Clark'll probably upgrade some of our stuff. He said something about a crystal shield, but I'm kinda attached to this one. It's the one Captain America used in his propaganda films before he traded it in for the circular one he uses now. You can even see the dent where the Red Skull punched it. Connor glanced at the shield slung on Patriot's back with newfound respect. Guardsman. Black Panther stated, and Connor froze in the doorway. Did I do something wrong? Nah, he's usually like that. Patriot shrugged. He only opens up around his closest friends. Cap, Superman, a couple of others. He'll warm up to you. Morph. The red-headed woman turned and smiled before rippling and shifting into a brown-haired man. Checking out your stored forms again? Patriot asked, then he pulled his glove off and stuck his hand out. Here, try me. Morph took Isaiah's hand, then rippled into a less muscular version of him. Odd, your power isn't natural. I'm not a mutant and I don't have that metagene thing. Isaiah shrugged as Morph shifted again. Serum boost. Ah, like Captain America. Morph realized. When I tried to copy him, I ended up a foot shorter than him and skinnier than a supermodel. That serum really makes a difference. Metagene? Connor asked curiously. I don't think I've heard of that before. It's a tiny quirk in human DNA that allows the person who has it to manifest powers in certain high-stress situations, especially those with an environmental aspect such as lightning, radiation, chemicals, and so on. Clark explained as he walked over, nodding to T'Challa. Almost all humans who have powers are either mutants or have the metagene. In fact, there is some evidence that the X gene is an evolution of the metagene that doesn't require external input to activate, but the overall effect is usually somewhat less except when triggered in extremely high-stress environments. How many people have this metagene? Connor asked and Clark shrugged. Less than 0.1%, if that. He replied. Since most of them won't be exposed to the circumstances that could trigger their powers, the number of powered individuals will probably remain fairly low, proportionally speaking. Enough business talk. A new voice interrupted and Connor looked round to see Martha Kent standing in the doorway. Come on, it's time for your first team lunch. Come on, people. Clark instantly said with a wide grin. Let's not keep my mom waiting. Chapter 3, Protectors. We've already dealt with most of the outstanding issues, so now we need to discuss icons. Superman said as he looked at his team, most of whom were slumped in satisfied pleasure, a legacy of his mother's cooking. Some of us don't have icons. I have my S in a diamond and Patriot has his shield, but I will use the symbol of Latveria. Connor said firmly. Union flag for me. Betsy chimed in. I will use the newer flag of my country. T'Challa stated. I have no idea. Sidera admitted. The kanji for gate perhaps? In honor of my adoptive parents. I'll have Xavier's symbol. Kevin sighed, rubbing at his stomach with a contented sigh. He led me in the X-Force and he saved me from apocalypse. If I may, Connor said tentatively, may I suggest that we use a map of the world as our team logo, maybe with the team name over it. Clark blinked, then pulled a small device out of his pocket, activating its solid hologram function. For a long moment, his fingers flew over the interface area, then an image formed in the middle of the room, turning so that everyone could see it. Something like this. The assembled team stared at the image for a long moment, then several nodded. Looks good. Isaiah finally said. And something like this for the individual variants. Clark asked as the image split into 8, with each new image changing slightly to incorporate the hero's insignia. The original image itself remained unchanged, but the hero's icons appeared around it. I like them. Sidera chirped with a wide grin and most of the others made noises of agreement. And our mission, sir? Patriot asked. Primarily planetary and above. Superman said firmly. There are other teams who are dealing with local problems, such as Generation X, the Henshin Rangers and the New Warriors, even if they do need more training. The Avengers and the X-Men can deal with larger problems. We are here for anything that is likely to affect the whole world or more. If we had been together at the time, we would have led the charge against Thanos. So we need to learn to command. Connor said. To lead disparate elements into battle as part of an overarching structure. Everyone stared at the teen in surprise and he raised a sardonic eyebrow. You do remember who my father is? He raised me to be the best I could be. Nothing less would do for the future ruler of Latveria. Kid has a point, though. Morph agreed. We do need more experience. Which is why I have contacted the other teams. Clark agreed. If you agree, then all of you will temporarily serve alongside the teams in the field, working with their leaders so that you can see for yourself how they operate. This will also help you to learn more about all of the other heroes. I heard that New Krypton has its own team now. Betsy interjected and Clark nodded with a wry smile. Yes. They call themselves the Companions of Rao and are led by Taurus, formerly the Chief of Security of New Olympus. All 3 nations contributed to it and there are 9 champions, reflecting the original 9 who fought for Rao in Kryptonian mythology. There are 3 Kryptonians, 3 New Olympians and 3 humans, a mutant, a meta, and a tech user, and they often split into 3 mixed teams. 9 is a good number for that. Connor agreed. Will we work with them as well? Of course. Clark confirmed. In fact, Clark tapped at the device and the icons vanished, being replaced by a schematic of what appeared to be the solar system, but one with almost twice as many planets. Our solar system. Clark said and several of the others gave him odd looks. Clark, as much as I would like to believe you. Patriot began, only to be interrupted by Connor. Interesting. You have the Yggdrasil dimensions. The what? Several people asked and Connor looked at Clark, who nodded and explained. The Yggdrasil dimensions. They aren't alternate dimensions like the Justice League realities, but they aren't completely in our space either, although the sun shines there as well as here. They exist somewhere between the physical and metaphysical realms. Asgard, Vanaheim, Nidavellir, Alfheim, Jotunheim, Svartalfheim, Helheim, and Muspelheim. As Clark listed them, tags appeared connected to each of the extra planets. Hell is unusual in that its frequency of existence means that the souls of the deceased often end up there and it resides between the other worlds and world of Muspelheim, home world of the race known as demons, and also close to the realm known to us as heaven. Heaven is not a world, but more of a hyperdimensional metaplane. We don't really have the words to describe it. Svartalfheim is a dead world, once home to the Dark Elves, although we can't rule out their return after the Thanos incident. That's gonna throw the astrophysicists into a panic, once they find out about these new worlds. Sidera muttered, caused several people to quickly stifle their chuckles. The orbits are difficult to show properly due to the dimensional variances, but every 5 millennia, give or take a century, the worlds align in what is known as the convergence. One happened very recently, while we were dealing with Thanos, in fact. Apparently the previous time it happened, the Dark Elves almost destroyed all life on the other planets in their attempt to dim the sun to something they found more comfortable. Then what the hell happened this time? Patriot demanded and Clark shook his head. Nothing. The Dark Elves were conquered by Thanos for use in his army and we took them down. Anyway, although our primary duty is to protect Earth, our remit extends to the other planets. I have already arranged with General Zod that we will be allowed to operate on New Krypton and I am heading to Asgard the day after tomorrow to seek permission from Odin to do the same in the realms that he commands. How long before our team gets members from them as well? Betsy joked. How do I look? Sidera asked, spreading her arms and spinning round so that everyone could see her new outfit. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail while her upper face was half obscured by a semi-transparent visor with metal highlights that gave the impression of a serene expression, giving her a reserved, sober appearance. Her outfit consisted of a skin-tight dark red bodysuit over which she wore a blue knee-length kimono with elbow-length sleeves and which was held closed by a red sash. Blue shoes protected her feet and embossed in red on the back of her kimono was the kanji for gate, stretching from her shoulder blades down to just above her belt. Nice. Morph grinned, then he glanced at Betsy, who was watching with a grin. You've changed as well. Just my colors. Betsy admitted, looking down at her outfit. I darkened them a bit so that I wouldn't clash with Clark's colors. I talked to my father and he agreed to my decision. Connor said as he entered the briefing hall. He approved my uniform change. Everyone turned and stared at Connor's new look. Although the black undersuit was the same, the tunic he wore was no longer green, but was a deep red. Joining the fashion parade. Betsy snarked, causing Morph to bite his own fist in an attempt to not laugh. Connor simply shook his head with a resigned expression. I decided to make this change for several reasons. He stated. Including the fact that technically, he is also my son. Clark supplied, causing everyone other than Connor and Isaiah to stare at him in shock. What, you didn't see how we resemble each other? Honor father, stop teasing them. Connor said firmly. My father, Victor Von Doom, sought the greatest being on the planet to be my second parent, both to let me eventually surpass him and to avoid the genetic degradation that pure cloning causes. My true father realized that Clark Kent was one of the very few on this world who could equal or even surpass him, under the right circumstances. Therefore my true father acquired my honor father's QNA and integrated it with a sample of his own to create me, for which I am grateful. That's weird. Betsy finally said. So, you wearing the S as well? Clark offered, but I declined. Connor shrugged. I respect Clark, but I exist by the choice of my true father and so his symbol is the one that I wear. A choice that I understand and respect. Clark said with a proud nod. Of course, Connor hasn't met his brother yet. Connor blinked, then smiled. I look forwards to meeting Chris. My father had considered calling me Superboy, but the name had already been taken. For a moment, everyone stared at Connor, then his lips quirked with a slight smile. Did you just prank us with that last bit? Morph gasped, then he grinned widely. Oh, I like you. And here is Kempex. Clark said as he led his team out of the bunker holding the door connecting the repurposed base to the Xavier Institute. We acquired it from S.H.I.E.L.D. and it is where Captain America trained before he actually became Captain America. We now use it to house most of the students of the Xavier Institute. They like it as it gives them twice as much bedroom space as they had in the mansion. What happens if it rains or there's a cold snap? Betsy asked curiously. Special projectors line the main paths. Clark said. If it rains, they create rain-free routes. If it's cold, they create virtual corridors of warm air. While this is an open-air base, we refuse to let the weather get in the way of learning. Nice. Connor nodded as a group of kids ran past. I assume this place is secure. The same defenses as the mansion. Clark supplied. And this is part of the Institute too. A voice said from behind them. Connor and Clark both turned and found themselves staring at Spider-Man, and Spider-Man. Peter. Clark asked and the red-on-blue Spider-Man waved while the shorter red-on-black Spider-Man was still looking round. You have a mini-me? Huh? Peter asked as he pulled off his mask. Oh, meet the newest member of the New York Guardians, currently known as Spider-Boy and my sidekick. He wanted to go by Anansi, but apparently there's already a hero of that name active in the League reality, plus it sounds too much like Nancy, and you can imagine the taunts that would cause. Pleased to meet you. Clark said with a smile. I see you've already been outfitted by Forge. New costume and web shooters. Spider-Boy said. Still need to learn how to use them, though. He's got a knockout skill, but his spider sense is weaker than mine. Peter said with a smile and a shrug. Still, it's good to have a sidekick. Hey. Spider-Boy protested, then he looked round. This place secure. It's as secure as Kryptonian tech can make it, so it's safe to reveal your true face. Peter confirmed and the younger teen pulled off his mask. You can call me Miles. The dark-skinned youth smiled. It's cool to meet you, Pete's told me loads of stories about you. And if you visit, I'm sure you'll hear plenty of stories about Peter. Clark smiled, causing the older teen to glare at him in amused annoyance. Anyway, I'm taking him to the assault course to do a couple of runs without touching the ground. Peter supplied. After that, it's back to HQ, then college for Miles. Man, can't I just ditch this day? Miles grumbled as he followed Peter towards the training area. Hey, I was a full superhero and still graduated with honors. Peter shot back. That was different. Isaiah finally managed. You get used to it. Clark chuckled. Now, moving on. Chapter 4, Activation. Morning, Dad. Hi, Mom. Chris chirped as he bounced into the kitchen. Pausing to switch the television to one of the news channels, he started to rummage around the cereal cupboard as Lara followed him in. Clark. Raven. She said as she speared an apple on one of her claws, pulling it out of the fruit bowl and taking a bite. Heard you were having new team, Clark. Why Raven not on? New Krypton has announced that the 100th new Kryptonian baby was decanted from its artificial womb yesterday, effectively tripling the Kryptonian population of the solar system. The adoptive parents have stated that they are delighted. I'm a reserve member. Mystique explained, picking up her empty plate and placing it in the dishwasher. But with Morph on the team, my skill set is somewhat redundant, not to mention rather underpowered compared to his, so for now I'm staying as leader and, den mother of the Brotherhood. The floods affecting southern Japan are finally receding and the Henshin Rangers have been congratulated for their aid in the rescue efforts. Head wondered. Lara said as Chris placed a bowl of cereal on the table and started to eat. Taking another bite, she sat down beside Chris and glanced at the television. Bishop Simon Theophilus of the Church of Humanity yesterday delivered a speech on the perils of uncontrolled enhancels and the threat that they pose to humanity. Lara snorted in disgust at the image of the man on the screen, then returned her attention to the apple, finishing it off with a dozen neat bites, then expertly throwing the core into the rubbish bin. I'm getting ready for school, she said as she rose from her chair. Not want be almost late, again. That wasn't my fault. Chris protested. I didn't intend for my super speed to activate and send us to Genosha before I could stop, at least Blink was kind enough to teleport us back. Chris tailed off as he saw his parents staring at him. Have F unit work Atagato Skullby. He blurted as he grabbed Lara and the duo vanished in a blur of movement. Clark stared at the empty door for another few seconds, then he turned to look at Raven. I'll call Marco later and get the story from him. She laughed. So, you ready for your day? Clark nodded as he swallowed the last bite of food, then he carried the plate to the dishwasher before pulling Raven into a hug and kissing her. I'll probably be bringing a couple of them back for tea. That's nice. Martha said as she entered the kitchen. It's always good having guests who appreciate fine food. Clark laughed, then pulled his mother into the hug. Morning, Mom. Good morning, Martha. Raven added as they released Martha and she smiled up at her son and daughter-in-law. Well, off you go, she said, making shooing motions with her hands. Go save the world and all that. You can tell us about the perils you faced later. I can tell you now. Clark sighed. Diplomatic meetings and paperwork. Oi. Then go and try not to start any wars or get too many paper cuts. Martha giggled, earning an eye roll before Clark vanished in a burst of super speed. So, Clark said as he took his seat at the midpoint of the hollow three-quarter circle briefing/meeting table at which the rest of his team were waiting, welcome to the first official briefing of the Protectors. The others smiled, nodded, or otherwise indicated that they were paying attention and Clark touched a control on the touchscreen surface of the table. A holographic representation of the solar system appeared in front of them with a number of tags of varying colors connected by lines to the planets. What are we looking at? Patriot asked and Clark tapped a couple more controls to highlight the tags as he spoke. The tags outlined in bright green are super teams which are coordinated with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s assistance. The dark green are independent super teams, those who have chosen not to take advantage of the offer of support. Red are known hostile teams or organizations while yellow are those who are a potential threat. Blue tags are countries, nations, and so on while gray are organizations of interest. The faster the blink rate, the higher priority the watch group have assigned it. Not many blinking tags. Patriot noted as the hologram slowly rotated. So, watch group. Shield, mainly, although several other intelligence agencies have supplied some specialists to help. Wakandan intelligence supplied an entire group of analysts to help sift through the gathered intel. Teachollah, if I didn't say it before, you have my thanks for that. Clark supplied. SHIELD has plenty of experience in running threat assessment groups, so I asked Fury for a favor and he said yes. I suppose that if you save the world enough times, they decide that they may as well pay you back. Guardsman joked, causing several of the others to chuckle. I've also contacted Governor General Zed, King Odin, and several others for any possible threats from outside system. Clark continued, the holographic image of the solar system shrinking and making way for several pictures. The three most likely threats are the Kree, the Skrull, and the Shi'ar, in that order. Zed was kind enough to provide copies of the data files he brought with him. The Kree are a race of humanoids. They have a stratified society ruled by their purebloods who are primarily identified by their blue skin. They are ruled by a millennia-old artificial intelligence known as the Supreme Intelligence, a biocomputer that has incorporated the minds of some of their greatest figures. There's a Kree religion that claims that the Supreme Intelligence is a deity. How this religion came about is currently unknown to us. It is known that the Kree are in a near-constant state of low-level war with their galactic neighbors, the Skrulls. The Skrulls are shapeshifters, although they resemble green-skinned humanoids in their resting state. Due to the fact that the Kree attacked them, the Skrull responded by reorganizing their entire civilization to become highly militaristic. For centuries, they managed to hold their own against the Kree until their war was forcibly ended, by the Kryptonians who were tired of both sides trying to seize their technology. The Shi'ar are also a humanoid race, although they have what we would call avian ancestry. It's notable that the Shi'ar have managed to remain fairly neutral between the Kree and Skrull empires. Although the youngest of the empires, the Shi'ar Imperium is also the most technologically advanced, although some of their technology does suggest that they managed to reverse engineer Kryptonian technology. The Shi'ar Imperium is actually a multi-species organization with the Shi'ar generally acting as the linchpin that keeps it from fragmenting. Although it started off as a highly expansionist militaristic society, it has transitioned to being an economic cooperative with a strong military to protect it. As Krypton removed itself from interstellar affairs, it was the Shi'ar who took over as keepers of the peace, expanding to not only the areas Krypton had once controlled, but several of the dwarf galaxies nearby. Going to war against the Shi'ar is generally seen as a losing proposition. The others were silent as they absorbed the information and Clark gave them a moment before triggering the next stage of the briefing. Other possible threats are many and varied. Galactus, the World Eater, Brainiac, formerly of Krypton, the Eternals, the list goes on. Fortunately, it's a huge galaxy, so chances are that they'll never come here, but... Clark stopped as the briefing holograms blinked out to be replaced by a hollow screen showing a bearded man in dark blue bodysuit in a black trench coat stepping through a glowing portal hovering in the middle of a park. A moment later, another man joined him, this one clad in a black and gray bodysuit, his eyes covered by red goggles while his hood boasted bat-like ears. But inter-reality first contacts are our responsibility. He sighed, motioning for the others to join him as he rose to his feet. Control, location of the new arrivals, please. The image shifted slightly and Saga nodded. Washington Monument. Everyone ready. Clark looked at his team. Patriot had unslung his shield while Morph had turned into a young Japanese girl. As Clark raised an eyebrow in query, Morph was suddenly encased in a very familiar transparent articulated force field. Morph, Guardsman and I take the front. Clark stated. Patriot, Black Panther, go wide and flank them. If they try to attack us, take them down from behind. Saga, stay back with Lady Britain, use your portals to contain the fight if it comes to that. Britain, empathic scans, but don't try anything intrusive yet. We don't know if they're telepathic and I don't want you struck down because you pushed too hard. Saga, do it. Why are we even bothering with this? We could have simply destroyed the machine. Patience, Batman. The trench-coated figure replied calmly. And look around you. The people here are watching, but not running. They don't look scared, merely cautious. We could learn a great deal from this place. While Metropolis remains unprotected. Batman grumbled. Superman. Look. I see it. Superman replied as a rectangular energy field flashed into existence less than 50 meters away. As they watched, 7 people almost erupted from the energy plane, 2 of them breaking off to circle round while 2 others stayed where they had appeared, the odd doorway vanishing behind them. The other 3 walked forwards and Superman raised an eyebrow slightly. Odd, the middle one, he looks a bit like Jor-El from the records. We gotta change channel. Bobby shouted as he sprinted into the main entertainment room of the Xavier Institute. Clark's on. Grabbing the remote he switched to the news and everyone turned as the reporter spoke. And here comes the team led by Clark Kent, here to make contact with these new arrivals. Who the 2 new people are, we still don't know, but with Superman here with his team on their first true mission together, the strangers obviously do not pose a threat anymore. Who? Jubilation Lee cheered. Go Clarky! Interesting. It would appear that their leader is named Superman too. And how the heck did you work that out? Batman growled as he turned, trying to keep the shield bearer in view. News reporter over there. Superman replied. Cute thing, reminds me somewhat of Miss Lane. Stay by the portal, I'll go and talk to my counterpart. Damn it, Hernan. Batman snapped as the Kryptonian flew forwards. Okay, stay here. Clark said quietly. It would seem that he's an alternate me and wants to talk one-on-one. Incidentally, the one with him is Batman. Another mixed-up world. Morph sighed as he dismissed his protective armor and shifted into Cyclops form, the comm device projecting an energy screen to restrain his constant optic blasts, then he shifted again into Storm's form. Seeing guardsmen looking at him quizzically, he gave an embarrassed shrug. Forgot for a moment that Kryptonians aren't affected by DirectX gene powers. He explained sheepishly. However, enough lightning can stop anything. Ah. Superman blinked as the Japanese girl turned into a taller man, then into the form of a white-haired dark-skinned woman even as his counterpart flew forwards to meet him. Landing gently, he waited for the caped man to land before him. Welcome to planet Earth, Reality Stream Alpha. The caped Superman said. I am Superman, also called Kall or Clark Kent. May I know your name, unless you have a secret identity to maintain? You may call me Hernan. The bearded Superman replied. You chose to reveal your name to the world. I was outed by someone seeking to turn public opinion against me. Clark shrugged. It backfired on them quite spectacularly. The school I occasionally teach at more than doubled in size. And this is your team? Hernan asked, looking round. We call ourselves the Protectors. Clark supplied. We're one of many dozens of teams in the solar system, we often train together and back each other up. We even share a centralized emergency response center to help us do our work more efficiently. Interesting. Hernan mused. Batman and I were about to try and recruit some heroes to rebuild and expand our Justice League after Wonder Woman returned to New Genesis to sort out certain issues she had with her grandfather. Clark blinked. Wait. What? Okay, I can see we'll need a new designation for your reality cluster, because what you just said does not sound like a normal Justice League reality. Normal. Chapter 5, Doomed? Clark Kent applied his thumbprint to the last of the seemingly endless stream of E-forms and leaned back with a sigh of relief as the hollow screen dissipated. A pair of hands started massaging his shoulders and Clark tilted his head back to smile at his wife. Thanks. I can't believe the sheer amount of paperwork that running a team generates. I'll have to ask Charles how he does it. I asked him and he uses Cerebro. Mystique laughed. He's got this huge computer he can control with his brain, so he uses it to do all of his paperwork at the speed of thought. That is so not fair. Clark grumbled, earning another laugh. But at least I'm now up to date on everything. The sudden blaring of a siren cut him off and Clark seemed to sag slightly. Why do I tempt fate like that? He grumbled, then he rose from the chair and pulled Mystique into a bridal carry. Well, let's see what just happened. Sir. The chief of watch snapped off a salute which betrayed his military background. 2 countries have just dropped off the grid, we are retasking independent satellites now in order to get a look. Which countries? Clark asked as the door behind him opened to disgorge most of his team while Saga simply stepped through a small portal from her quarters to the watch room. North Korea has vanished, leaving what early reports are calling dinosaur jungle in its place. The chief said, glancing at the data pad in his hand. Normally, this wouldn't cause too much of a problem given how isolationist and aggressive North Korea can be, but the same thing happened to another country. Latvia. What? Connor gasped. Father. Sis. Are they? We don't know. The chief said almost absently as he paged through the reports. We have some reports of the North Korean armed forces emplacing metallic structures along their coast and land borders, that might have something to do with it. Nothing about Latvia, but then again, Lord Doom is known to have a very competent counterintelligence division. We'll split into 2 teams. Clark decided. T'Challa, you lead one to North Korea. Take Saga, Isaiah, and Kevin. Remember that the Chinese and South Koreans will be starting their investigations as well. Connor, you and Betsy are with me. If it's something your father did, he probably left a message or clue behind and you're the best chance of finding it. Understood. Connor said, his face still pale but otherwise composed. Saga, give us a gate to Latvia, please. Sure thing. Gatekeeper said as a rectangle of light shimmered into view. Let's move. Clark barked as he flew through the portal, ready to face whatever was on the other side. My sensors are picking up traces of what seems to be a dimensional displacement. Black Panther said as he looked around at the jungle which had replaced an entire country. My scientists have run an analysis and they say that the dimensional shift occurred entirely within the borders of North Korea. We're getting the same here as well. Clark said from what had been Latvia. I've had a couple of deep drones sent to me and I've deployed them, the effect seems to have gone down almost a mile. That is quite deep. T'Challa said as similar data flashed up on his lens HUD, then a wireframe image flashed into view. It seems that the underneath is rounded. Same here. Clark confirmed. The outer mile is rounded, but it's flat further in. Panther looked around, his lenses highlighting unusual energy readings or places where anomalies were waiting to be investigated. I think we may need more people to help search. He said after a long moment. I've asked Control to send out requests. Clark replied. Sir. Zed looked up from the cat whose fur he was stroking. Ah, Kartao. Is there a problem? The young Kryptonian landed a few meters away from the Governor-General, his expression one of confusion. Sir, what? I heard quite a few people discussing how their pets help them to relax, to regain their mental stability. Zed said, scratching lightly between the ears of the cat sprawled across his lap. I made a deal with a certain zoo owner in New Zealand. We moved his entire park across, quadrupling its size and creating new enclosures closer to the natural environments of the animals in question, plus we placed several gates where his old park had been in order to improve access and in exchange, Kryptonians are allowed to adopt one of the cats. Like Leon here. Once he figured out I was too tough for him to eat, he settled down very nicely. Kartao looked at the fully grown lion for a long moment. Is this a human thing? Sort of. Zed shrugged. I believe humans have smaller versions, they call them house cats. They aren't anywhere near as nice to stroke as lions. I believe that Nami K has adopted one of the ligers, quite apt given that they are hybrids. Kartao nodded, then slowly pulled out a small data pad. Message from the council, sir. As he reached forwards to hand over the pad, Leon growled slightly, causing him to jolt backwards. Zed chuckled as he watched the ensign flinch from the quadrupedal predator and Kartao blushed slightly. Sorry, sir. Zed reached out with one hand while rubbing Lion's ears with the other and Kartao quickly darted forwards to hand over the pad, then retreated. Thank you, ensign. Zed said. Dismissed. As Kartao flew back towards New Zen City, Zed activated the pad to see what was important enough that it had been sent via messenger. A moment passed, then he sighed and, Careful not to dislodge the lion dozing on his lap, he pulled a small communicator from his belt and activated it. Taurus, the companions of Rao might be needed on Earth. It would seem that the protectors have a slight problem to deal with. Apparently 2 countries have been stolen. The eloquent silence from the communicator somehow managed to relay the gobsmacked expression of the new Olympian on the other end of the connection. Superman. Clark looked round to where a flying chariot and 2 airborne figures were approaching. On the lead chariot stood a minotaur clad in high-tech yet traditionally stylized armor, while to his left, a human kept in formation, wearing what looked like a cross between a fighter jet and powered armor. To his right, a Kryptonian floated serenely, mild amusement on his face. Tauros. Clark called in greeting as he flew up to meet the leader of the companions of Rao. I see you've finally deployed off-world. Who are your friends? Meet Kontyar and Mach 1. Tauros said, waving at the Kryptonian and human respectively. Mach 1 uses a special flight rig that lets him, what was it? I can do anything a fighter jet can do in a quarter of the space. The reply came quickly. I was offered a place with the companions due to my mechanical skills. He helps keep our equipment working. Tauros added. Anyway, we are here as the lance of the companions, ready to aid. The sword is currently moving to rendezvous with your people in North Korea, while the axe is moving to Hall of Doors, ready to reinforce whoever needs aid. Superman nodded. Thank you. How good are your sensor arrays? We're running sensor runs to send data back to control so that the scientists can work out just what's happened. We have military-level sensors, Kryptonian tech. Tauros stated. I have a full array in my chariot, while Mach 1 has a combat array. Biological sensors only. Sorry. Khan shrugged. So, where do you need us? Tauros asked. Sardav Rao, reporting for duty. The new arrival said as he landed in front of Black Panther. My name is Rogar, second in command of the companions of Rao. With me are Sphinx from New Olympus and Speed Demon. The winged cat girl landed gently, folding her wings as she nodded in greeting, even as a man clad in a red and black bodysuit blurred to a stop by them. Sanders. Speed Demon half turned to see Patriot staring at him. You know him? T'Challa asked and Patriot nodded. He used to be on the other side. Went up against Parker a time or two before the kid joined Xavier's people, but generally kept a low profile. Went up against me once. Damned annoying, I couldn't move fast enough to hit him while I was too tough for him to hurt. I remember that fight. Sanders mused. I could have taken you down, but I didn't want to risk having Superman come to investigate. Everyone knows Superman can move as fast as, or faster than, most speedsters. Quicksilver really spread the word around. We are optimized for recon and hit and fade operations. Rogar supplied. For this mission, we are placing ourselves under your authority. Where do you want us to start searching? The Chief of Watch looked round as the door opened to admit a trio of people he hadn't ever seen before. Pausing to pass a command to one of the analysts, he strode over to them. Are you in charge here? The woman leading the trio asked. We're the Axe of Rao, part of the Companions of Rao. I'm Silver, squad leader. With me are Zades and Londo. The gray-skinned winged new Olympian and the Kryptonian male both nodded as they were introduced. We've been sent here to act as a reserve group should the protectors need help. Silver added. Clark landed by the temporary camp and blinked at the sight of several velociraptors being held in a fenced-off enclosure, small stains on the grass showing that they had been fed. Ah, Superman. The familiar man by the enclosure waved. I hope you don't mind, but these beasts are more intelligent than most dogs. I'm hoping to train them so that they can work as guard creatures and riding steeds. Clark blinked a couple of times, then his mind pulled up the man's name. Hoping to increase the mobility of the Genosha Guardians, Beast Talker. The mutant grinned. You got it. It'll take me a while to overcome their natural bloodlust, but I've done harder things. Once I get them trained up, we'll probably assign some of the unpowered as their riders. Clark nodded, then turned to where Connor had stepped out of the newly erected command tent, an odd expression on his face. Clark, my father wants to talk to you. Clark's eyebrows shot up and he followed Connor into the control tent, where a hologram of Victor Von Doom was being projected. Lord Doom, you are well. I am. I apologize for not alerting you earlier, but there was a 42% chance my plan would not work. However, it has, and Latveria is now unconstrained by its borders. I now have an entire world to rule. You shifted Latveria to another dimension, one where humanity never evolved. Clark realized, and Victor gave him an approving nod even as the short, stocky figure of Kim Jong-un joined him. I have indeed, and I also took the opportunity to increase the population of my nation, with my daughter's aid. Connor laughed in realization an instant before Kim's form rippled and lengthened, reforming into Cynthia Von Doom. Hello, brother. God, it's good to get changed into a more comfortable form. Hello, sister. Connor chuckled. So, replacing the leader of North Korea and using his position to claim the country for Dad was your mission, huh? Cynthia smirked. Clark, I will need a favor. Doom said soberly. I have deployed a gate, through which this signal is being sent, but I would quite appreciate the gate being relocated to one of the moon-based domes. Any particular number you want? Clark offered, and Doom stroked his metal-covered chin thoughtfully. Not 4 or 5, both numbers are too closely linked to my old rival, Reed Richards. I have had too many run-ins with S.H.I.E.L.D. for them to see me as anything other than a threat, so not one of the domes near them. I think that Dome 17 would be the best place for the gate to go. If the gate is ready for transport, I'll see to it personally. Clark stated. However, may I suggest you do a press release? Having two countries just vanish like that really panicked a lot of people. An excellent idea, Clark. I shall begin composing one within the hour. Clark started to reply, then paused as an icon began flashing on the control screen. Lord Doom, please excuse me, but I have an emergency call incoming. Clark tapped the icon and the hologram flickered as Doom vanished, to be replaced by a familiar figure. Clark, get here now. Zed barked. We have a probable code Omega. Check the description for the links to the author.